welcome to the Habibis, three game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host for today, Fawzi Mesmar.
And I'm Osama Dorius, and we don't have a Rami this week either.
What a surprise. It's the two of us
Yeah.
again.
Well, why is it always two these days? Like, we should change our intro to two Arab developers drinking good Arab tea.
It
Like,
should be whoever is available Arab developers.
we keep adding the Arab in front of developers instead of in front of the tea. Did you notice?
Yes.
Yeah. It's all good. We have to own it now. But
It's not a
the new
requirement to
intro
be
is
a
in order.
Habibi. You don't have to be Arab, you
No.
can be anything.
You can be anything. We keep slipping up. It's a mistake. And even our tea doesn't have to be Arabic tea. It's fine. Any tea will do.
Yeah, seriously. Oh,
Yeah.
but Osama, it's so good to
But
catch up with you, man. It's been a while.
it is. I've missed you so much. We haven't had a
Yeah,
conversation in a while. I
yeah,
think you had an
same.
episode with Rami without me. I had one
Yeah,
with
you
Rami
were
without
sick
you.
that
So,
time, and then I heard a couple of
yes.
episodes when I was on the road.
Yes.
Still
Exactly.
am.
That's happening more and more, huh?
Oh my
Yeah.
god, yes.
How
Yeah.
how's that working out for you?
It's good. It's busy, and yeah, I'm trying to still like wrap my head around that. I'm kind of like trying to
Yeah.
find out what works for me or what doesn't.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of
I hear
nice
you.
like to be able to be on the road and see people again. I like to try to get a bit of my old life back, so to say. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I'm not the same me anymore. So like,
Yeah.
if trying to get the old life back, but like I'm not. I'm a different person. I value some things differently. So like, there are some things that I appreciate about like life going back to normal. There are some things I don't appreciate as much. So trying to find that
Yeah.
balance has been
Likewise.
interesting.
Likewise, like my current work situation, we have an office. It's a beautiful office. Like it's the first office I've worked in that actually has catered food for breakfast and lunch and all these things. Like
Nice.
lots of different, yeah. And I've been there for since January, and I've gone into the office exactly twice because I have my own home office, and the commute is long, and it's so much more convenient to just stay home and work, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have the same role as I did before. So like collaboration in person is easier. No one's gonna argue otherwise, right? Is it worth it? That's a different story. But I to me, I don't have that much collaboration. Most of my meetings are with people who are remote anyway. It's with partners, with clients, that kind of thing. So I'm not gonna do those from the office anyway, most of the time. So if you had asked me at the beginning of the pandemic, can like do or were you ever want to work from home permanently? I probably would have told you no. I'm a people person. I want to be with people. That's who I am. But things change in 2 years. It's a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like especially like I could have some days in which like I have like a lot of meetings back to back with different people from all kinds of different offices and timelines. So I
Yeah,
am doing virtual meetings anyway. So
yeah,
commuting, taking the train, doing whatever the time, 30 minutes or an hour a day, back and forth to go
mhm,
to an office, to just take a meeting room, to do all the
yeah.
meetings, then come back just doesn't make sense to me anymore. It makes a lot more sense to just do those kinds of days from home.
Absolutely.
And there's like
There
this
are a lot of things.
yeah, like there's other
Go
things
ahead,
that
sir.
are like, still like the divided between myself around that. So like for example, during the pandemic, if I was gonna do a talk at the university or something, since
Hmm.
it was remote learning for everybody, I'll be after work or like on a Saturday or whatever. I just log in, do the talk, and then log out. That's 30
Hmm.
minutes to an hour.
Hmm.
But now if I want to do it in person, even if it's still within Sweden, it means that I need
Yeah,
to go there. If it's outside of the Stockholm city, or like if it's more than 2 hours by the train, for example, that
yeah,
means that it's an overnight stay.
yeah,
So it's 2 days for an hour and a half, or maybe 2 hours worth for the class.
yeah.
So
It's
for me now, I'm
not
becoming a
worth
lot
it.
more selective in terms of like I'm
Yeah.
not sure if I could be able to do that same amount of reaching out to
Hmm.
people, and
Yeah.
that's not. And that's the part that's kind of sad because it's good to be able to reach out to a lot of people. I feel like I've reached out to a lot of people in the pandemic that I wouldn't otherwise. But now the
Hmm.
physical reality of time and travel and distance and all of that, they're kind of limiting how much. how much in contact I can be, or like, how much I could give,
Yeah,
so to say. Like how much of my time I can give is now being very strained, and that kind of makes me
yeah.
sad a bit.
It goes back to the before times when it used to be strained as well. I agree. I mean, I teach as well. I have a 4 hour class once a week, not counting corrections and preparations, just like in class time.
Uh,
Um, in the before times, that was 6 hours of my day, and like it was like an hour because the university was further than my workplace from my home, so it was an hour commute, then 4 hours of teaching, then an hour commute back. All after work, I was dead tired and exhausted when it was done. Even though I love teaching and I don't want to stop, you can imagine six like having a full at least 8 hour shift and then adding 6 hours to it at the end of the day on a weekly basis. That's not easy.
yeah,
Now I basically have two computers, one personal computer and my work computer, and I have a switch. I press a button and I'm at school.
yeah,
I go from work to school by
yeah,
pressing a button. Everything just switches over and I'm ready. Like I could have maybe 10 minutes downtime between work and class, when before I had to arrange it so that I'm not late for class. I have to make sure everything's done like beforehand. And if I have 10 minutes, I could go change into my like comfortable clothes or whatever it is that I needed to do to be in the mindset of I'm doing something different. That's important to me. Like I have a separation between my job, so like it resets a bit, so I don't carry over the same fatigue. I
that's
don't know
cool.
if other people have something similar, but it's part of my routine. And it just I get a reset. I'll get a little burst of energy, and when it's done, I'm already home, and that is the best part. Like commuting from work to school wasn't a big deal. Commuting from school after that long day to home, I was dead on my feet at that point.
Yeah,
And to be able to just like walk upstairs and either go to bed or go on my couch, whatever I want to feel like, that's invaluable. And it's making and teaching itself, teaching like non-digital game design, because I teach the one-on-one class, so they're learning scripting and engines in parallel.
hmm,
So they can't make video games yet. Some of them can, they already had a portfolio, but some can't. So we teach them board like the principles of game design through board game and card games. Doing that remotely is tricky,
yeah. That's very
right?
difficult. I teach 101 too, so like there's a lot of exercises that involve board games that I just can't do during
Yeah,
the course of the class anymore, and they're more like assignments now.
yeah, we should exchange notes because I do it through tabletop simulator now and it works relatively okay. There's a few pains at the beginning, but it's relatively okay.
Oh,
I
interesting.
and I Yeah, like we should exchange those. Some exercises I cut out because they weren't as good, and others I adapted and I came up with new ones because like you know that's what you do, right?
Yeah,
You adapt to your situation. But and speaking of that, adapting is now like I, there's travel in my future all over again. GDC was the first trip I did, but all of a sudden, when I went to GDC, it did something also in our at our home where my kids are like, "When are we going to go on a road trip?" Because we are a road trip family.
yeah.
This is a thing that we always do.
Oh,
Like we
that's
have
cool.
a yeah, we visit big cities and we love it. Like and it's been 2 years where we just haven't,
Yeah,
and now they're asking about it actively. They really want it, and it's like I don't know how we're gonna make it work, but I guess there are going to be road trips in our future again. But like, are these like every city is different? It's gonna take more research. Like, are things still open? Like, part of our regular tours is we visit every major museum in every city we go to. My kids love museums, right?
yeah,
And but a lot of them closed during COVID. Like they're not active or that kind of thing. So I like it's just going to be a lot more complex. Like all the restrictions. Are you going to be able to eat out because you're not you don't most of the time you don't have a kitchen or the means to cook when you go to these places, right?
yeah,
So are we going to be able to eat out? Is there a curfew? Are we like all the research that's going to be on top of it? It just makes it when before it was to be like, we'll figure it out. Now it's like, no, you have to have it all planned out beforehand. I don't know if that's your experience or if it's just anxiety on my side because it's been so long. But like, I'm thinking a lot about it now.
oh
Like,
yeah.
which places are friendly for travel? Which ones aren't? What can you do? That kind of thing.
I think for us here in the EU, I haven't been outside of the EU in in the past couple of years, so I really don't know.
Yeah.
But well, I went to the UK, so that I guess counts that I've been outside of the EU for a bit. But
Mm.
for the
It
major.
barely counts, but yes.
um, but like, yeah, it's coming back to normal. Like restaurants are open everywhere, all modes of
Mm,
transportation is open everywhere. There's actually like a lot of pressure on airports right now because everybody's just up and going.
mm,
And like the most airports are short staffed because they let go of a lot of the staff during the pandemic, and now like the flight schedule is back to pre-COVID uh,
oh wow.
schedule. It's almost exactly the same. And like sometimes like there's be lines at the security gates for a while. So yeah, like now I'm guessing like it's as you were saying, like trying to manage everything comes together because
Mm,
there's work related travel because I work with teams all over Europe, and now I could visit them in person and we can actually meet and work together. So
hmm.
that's gonna be an ongoing thing. And now there's the
That's interesting.
conferences and the schools that I work with. They're also all over Europe, and now they're expanding outside of the EU. So I also need to balance that. And
Mm,
then
hmm.
there's like personal travel, like going and seeing my family, going seeing friends I haven't seen in a long time, or friends coming over visit, and all of that stuff. My schedule is becoming a bit of a nightmare. And I
Yeah.
guess it's just became like that out of the blue. Like I'm booked all the way till August now.
Wow. Yeah. I'm very close to that. I have trips in May, a trip in June, and a trip in September. So it's not booked all the way through. Oh, and a pending one possibly in December.
Yeah.
But so it's not booked all the way through, but it's like I haven't had anything similar to this in 2 years. In 2 years, if you had asked me where you're going to go, I would have had nothing on my calendar
Yeah.
for like in the future at all. Like nothing. I'm going to be in Montreal forever type thing, which is so out of the norm, right?
Yeah.
And now I have like four pending future like planned trips, and that's not counting the road trips that I'm gonna pepper around here and there to make up for lost time with my kids, right?
Yeah, it's getting very interesting. And like if my schedule is like this and your schedule is like this, I can only imagine what Rami's schedule is like. Uh, Plus now that he can also fly, so it's
Yeah. So we're never gonna see Robbie again, are we?
no.
It's over.
We haven't bumped
Okay.
into each other at the same event yet this year, but we'll see. It's
Uh,
bound to happen in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure.
Me and Rami, I had a 100% average so far. I went to one thing and I saw him there. So, but like, I'm looking forward to bumping into you, Fauzi. It's
Yeah,
been too long.
yeah, same here, Sama. We're gonna make it work. But yeah, it's like you said, it's trying to adjust to this new normal, and I think I'm jumping in for the time being and trying to figure out what works for me and what doesn't, because eventually I think I also need to make sure that I have the time for myself, and
No,
I identify what really works for me on that side. But yeah, you know, the only constant thing is change in this life. So
it's beautifully put. It's absolutely true.
speaking
Okay, so
speaking
do
of
we
the
want to talk
only
about other things?
speaking on the only constant thing, I imagine there's there's one constant game in your tweets.
Yes. Oh wow, what a segue! I love it. We have to call it out. It's tradition. Yeah,
Tradition.
I've had Elden Ring on the brain, and I'm nearing the end. To
Okay.
be honest, I was hoping that I was going to finish the game before this episode is recorded because I
Mm.
wanted to say, and I'm done with Elden Ring. But I'm struggling. I'm on the last boss. I am on the last boss.
Is
This is the
one
final
is
stretch.
one ever done with Elden Ring?
No, I don't know if I'm actually gonna stop, but I do know that I want to. Like, I'm really looking forward to saying I beat a Souls game because I've never done that before.
Nice.
This would be my first.
And this is you, like
And
last time we spoke, you were like, you were definite that you're gonna drop out. You're not gonna finish
yeah,
it.
I've quit 5 times. I've legitimately quit the game 5 times, where I'm like, I'm not playing this anymore. This is too frustrating. But the problem is, like, and it's not a problem per se, but the reality, the situation is that world. I love the world building so
You're
much
so
that
good.
it's so good. I have a hard time playing anything else. I have like when I say I have Elden Ring on the brain, I have Elden Ring on the brain. Like I think about starting another game right now. I'm like, no, I'm not done with this one. And the last two games that gave me that feeling were Breath of the Wild and Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh yeah.
where I loved the world so much I didn't want to leave them.
Mm-hmm.
Both were games that I beat twice.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, to finish a game is a big deal. To finish a game and continue playing is a bigger deal. To
Yeah.
beat a game twice, that is like a once every 2 year type thing. Like, I don't do that often. So I'm not going to say it's impossible or it never happens, but it used to happen all the time. Like, I used to have the games that I used to play every year. I don't know if you have those. Like, I used to play Super Metroid, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I'd start a new save every year. Like, sometimes a Final Fantasy, like one of the old school ones.
Yeah.
Those are like the my favorite games of all time. I would just like, I feel like playing this one again, right?
Yeah.
Who has time for that when you become a professional game designer? Who has time for it, right? You have to play so many new things that come out just to keep up to date. So like that went on the side. I stopped doing that. So the chances of me playing a game a second time are very low. And Eldering, I don't know if I will, or I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm going to do it back to back. But right now, I have because I'm going to wait to see if that feeling comes back where I'm like, I'm not done with it yet. That's the motivation to play it again, not any other reason. I'm not trying to check a box or anything. It's just that feeling of I want to go back. Do you want to go back enough, more than playing a new game that's coming out? And if I have that feeling, then I'll go back. There's a new game plus in this,
Okay.
so that's a very yeah. There's a very good argument to go back.
I think like
How
if
far are you?
I think if I was to replay the game, it would be because I want to start a new character. So I don't know if New Game Plus
Yeah.
is for me.
Well, I respect anyway to be one the arguably. I don't even think it's very arguable, but there's one character, one optional boss
Mm-hmm.
that is considered the hardest boss in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I respect in order to be able to beat her.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone said that she's harder than the final boss. I actually had even though yes, she's extremely hard. And at one point I said, I'm not going to even fight her. Like she beat me so badly, I'm like, I'm not even going to fight her. But I loved her design so much that I'm like, you know what? I'll go try again. And I tried and I tried and I respect and I beat her. And the satisfaction I got from beating this optional boss,
Yeah.
there's no reason to do it, was so good. But now, like, to me, she's actually easier than the final boss. I'm struggling more with the final boss, and I could tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she is a character where her mechanics are like when you're fighting her, it feels like you're playing a fighting game.
Yeah.
It feels like you're playing like Soul Calibur, for example,
Ah,
right?
nice.
Yeah, it's all about blocks and parries, and she dodges that kind of thing. So I play fighting games, right?
Yep.
So I could draw the one to one of this is what I do when when I play this game. It's like I'm practicing against a better player,
Yeah.
a better player than you, who you just have to beat one time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very familiar feeling for me as playing fighting games in the arcades. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The last boss of Elden Ring, without going into too much spoilers, is not that.
Okay.
It is it feels very different than almost every other boss in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a mental shift that I'm gonna have to get over. So because of that, it's more difficult. You know what I mean? It's not as familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
So
your
I don't know if I'm gonna try. We'll see.
What's your current level?
162, something like
Oh,
that.
okay. Wow. Yeah, pretty good.
It's high. It's high. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about my fire giant situation?
I read it on Twitter, but I would love to hear it in person.
Yeah, well, so that's probably the third time I quit playing the game, or maybe the fourth. When
Wait, I
I
think you
got
spoke
this.
about it on the podcast as well. That was the time when when you were saying that if Fauzi is listening, this game is
Oh
hard.
yes, I did. Okay, so I won't retread water,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Won't go over again. Just like the summer of that for the people who didn't watch it is that I was throwing myself against this boss, and I realized that like through people's like comments on Twitter that I was very under leveled for the boss, and I was missing one crucial mechanic, which is the upgrading of the helper. And even through that, I still was so stubborn that I just kept playing until I beat that boss under leveled. At that point, at least I made up for the leveling up the summon, the helper. But like
yeah.
that's when I realized that I beat almost like this is like a near end game boss. I beat almost every other boss before that, like with a liability, with not having an upgraded summons. They would just die with one hit.
Dude, that's
So the
very
game
impressive, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. But like After that, it was easy mode. Once I upgraded that, I zipped through
And you
almost all the
probably
other
had so
bosses.
much of the items required to upgrade them. They just like
I
leveled them
did.
up like 5 times in a row or something.
I leveled up five of them, like four or five of
Yeah,
them, and I was just like picking which one I liked more because it's the first time that they actually had use and range and value other than just dying in one or two hits.
yeah,
And I couldn't like I remember reading one guide that said pick this one because this one is tanky. I'm
yeah.
like, that's what you consider tanky? It dies in two hits instead of one. Like I was shocked. I couldn't understand what it was like. Bizarro world. But yeah, so like the game has a lot of things like that
Yeah.
where it just doesn't explain things to you.
I think that
What level are you at? Where are you at right now?
uh, before I hit the road, I think I was like anywhere between 55 to 60 hours in the game, and I think I
Okay,
was like level 95 ish.
yeah, I'm like 110 hours, I think, or 120 hours in the
Yeah,
game,
yeah,
something like
you've you've surpassed me a long time ago.
that.
I still think a lot about the game and I want to play it, but well, if I'm traveling within the Nordics, I usually would continue to play on my PS5 through remote play.
Yeah.
So I basically continue to play the game at home from wherever I
Hmm.
am. But
Hmm.
the past couple of weeks I've been in France and I haven't had good internet at all. So it's been
Yeah.
it's been very difficult for me to play the game. So I'm eager to. I'm going back next week, hopefully, so I'll be able to play some more.
I can't wait. We should like play together. We've been saying it, but like we haven't
Yeah,
been.
we should work it
You
out
know,
because you could probably come and carry me in a bunch of boss battles at this point.
I, I think so. I've been doing that actually for fun.
Yeah,
Jumping in and helping people with like some boss battles. They were very tough for me, and like I didn't really feel a sense of joy when I beat them because I was just like, "Good, you're gone." Just
yeah.
like I was.
You
So I was
barely
like,
won.
what? Maybe I'll the barely won, and it didn't. Felt like I won out of luck because they didn't do that one attack that keeps killing me or something like that.
Yeah,
And I wanted to go back now that I wasn't severely under leveled, and I did. I just played with other people, and I helped them beat those bosses, and I got the a better experience out of it, so I could leave it with a fond memory. But it's so different than any other game I've played in all of like in so many different ways. It's shocking. It really does feel like Bizarro World AAA. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's yeah, it's hard to explain it to anyone who hasn't played it. It's a very different experience. Breath of the Wild was like that as well. Like it just not to this degree, but it just felt like they made a lot of decisions that other games don't make. You know what I mean?
yeah,
All the other open world games are heading in a direction. That one went in a different direction. This one feels like it went in a different, even more different, like even more different direction than Breath of the Wild. It's refreshing. It's frustrating. I love it. I hate it. It's amazing. I feel things, and I think that's what's the important part. Is like I feel things.
it's massive, and I think it's
It is.
there's something about that game that kind of scares me as well because it almost sets the bar to what players would expect from an open world game in terms of like amount
Yeah.
of content and stuff to be in it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's
They were
gonna
really
be
smart, like
interesting
from a
to see.
production point of view. Yeah. But from a production point of view, from what I understand, having not played many Souls games for long, is that there's a lot of clever reuse of like systems of content from other games.
Oh yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
yeah. Some I can tell. Like there are models in the game that I'm like that's lower poly count than than anything else in this game. Like the bears, I don't know. The bears, like it's like they jumped out at me right away. They felt like they were two generations behind. Right, the moon
Yeah.
bears. I don't know if they existed in other games. I'd never encountered them, but that they felt like they didn't fit. Right,
Hmm.
but like overall, you forgive it because there's just more content. Right,
Yeah.
it
There's so
works.
much, and it works. Like they stand out, but they don't stand out that much
Yeah,
still.
yeah,
So it's still like within what. Yeah, it's a it's a crazy high quality game for sure.
yeah. Have you played anything else?
Yeah, so since I didn't get the chance to play Elden Ring, though it's on my mind, I did play some games on my phone, which I haven't done in a long time. I downloaded the Riot game called The Legend
Oh,
of Rune Terra.
yeah, I've played that. It's the Riot card game.
It's
Yeah,
the League of Legends official card game, I think.
yeah, exactly.
So
I liked it. I
you
didn't play it
liked it.
long, but I liked it.
So
Yeah,
like I've never really played League of Legends. I think I played two games or something like that because I played Dota.
yeah,
So Dota 2 was my MOBA of choice, and every time I was like, maybe I should check out League, and I want to start it, and then I think to myself, that means I need to spend at least
yeah,
500 hours until not even I become average, until I understand what's going on,
yeah,
so I can play
yeah,
the game. And then I think to myself, then I'd just play more Dota then instead of like switching to another MOBA and learning that, because learning a
yeah.
MOBA just takes so much time.
It does. It does. It's a
Until I
huge
quit
investment.
MOBAs altogether because they take so much of my life
Yeah,
in so many ways.
yeah. That same thing happened to me recently. I used to play a lot of League of Legends. I probably have like 2,000, 3,000 hours. I don't know how many hours now.
Yeah,
It's
something
like
similar in
been
Dota. Like
calculated.
it's in the thousands for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I stopped, because I wanted to play other games at some point, like you said.
Yeah,
And then when the League of Legends show came out, what's it called again?
Arcane.
The Arcane. Yes, I was like, oh my, I love these characters. I want to go play again, and I did. And I actually had a long streak. I played it for like 2 or 3 months, almost every day, like just 1 or 2 matches, and I loved it. And then my account got hacked, and I'm like, you know what? That's fine. Like it got it got taken over by someone else. Like, you know what? It's like, yeah, let's go back to playing other things. So I still have to go through the process of recovering the account out of principle, but I just haven't didn't feel like it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Um, but I get that feeling. I get that feeling of, it's like it consumes you, right? It's one of those things that you really have to study it. You have to learn about all the characters. You have to practice it, or your skills atrophy. There are a lot of reasons to go back. So it's hard for me to play it casually.
You
It's
can't.
almost like I'm all in, or I don't.
Yeah,
Right?
you can't. Like there's so much knowledge that you need to have in order for you. Like even if you put skill aside, like just the knowledge that you
Yeah.
need to have to properly play a MOBA is
Yeah.
just immense. Like you need to spend a lot of time studying
Yeah.
to be able
Exactly.
to really play. But yeah, like it's
Exactly.
funny that you mentioned the show. Like I loved Arcane. I spoke about it here on the podcast. Really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
And like recently, because I was in France, the show was actually made in France, in Paris, the
Oh, I didn't know
animation
that.
studio. Yeah, I didn't know that either. And like I came
Oh,
across a lot of people that either were involved with the show or like friends with people involved with the show. So like it was a topic of conversation a lot over the past couple of weeks.
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. I love the art style and I love the show. I like it. Genuinely made me interested in the world of League of Legends that I know nothing about, and now I now know some characters because of that show.
Hmm. Hmm. So about Runeterra, how
Exactly,
did you like it?
that got me to download the card game, and I started playing it. It's interesting. So like I love card games generally. So like if you play Magic the Gathering, or Hearthstone,
Mhm,
or anything of the sort, this definitely
mhm.
feels like one of those games. It feels so much like Hearthstone. In fact, I don't know if you
Yes,
played a bit of Hearthstone yourself.
I played a lot of Hearthstone,
Yeah,
and that's actually the reason I didn't stick to Runeterra, because I was playing it. I played it off of a long stretch where I played Hearthstone, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool, but it's so similar. I kind of just want to go back and play Hearthstone. I already have all the cards, I already like know all the strategies, and that's kind of why the only reason I abandoned it, because otherwise I really liked it.
yeah. I
Yeah.
thought it had a very interesting solo player mode as well.
Mm.
That's one of the things that stood out for me. It allows you to
Mhm.
kind of level up, experience a story, and to obtain cards
Yeah.
without the pressure of going directly against other players.
Yeah.
And I kind of appreciated that because like I'm not deep in the lore almost at all. Like I said, like now like my lore is basically Arcane the show, and I haven't played the
Yeah.
game much.
Hmm.
And I like that with the solo campaign that they put together, very cleverly designed. It also like slowly teaches you the mechanics as well. So like
Hmm.
you bit by bit get to know all the different types of cards, and then like you get to advanced techniques and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
by the time I was ready, like I think it was like 3 to 4 hours in, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, now I can play a multiplayer game. I feel a bit confident about that, and like I had a much better time than if I would have jumped in directly.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so it was really good. Like I really like what they're doing. So I really like what they're doing in terms of like how they're making like a convergence between a lot of like the league metaverse, so to say. And there's like,
Hmm.
there's the MOBA, there's the show, now there's the card game, and now there's probably other games in development, and they're like all of them kind of coming together, so that if there's a thing that you like, you'll probably find something for you in that universe. I kind of like that direction.
I
Um,
agree, a
uh,
hundred percent.
this game came out, I think, in 2020, so it's not really new. It's just kind of slipped under my radar,
Yeah.
but
You
it's
know about the RPG that's coming out too, right?
there's an RPG that's coming out. I forgot that
Yeah,
there's an RPG coming out. There's a fighting game. I heard. I forgot about
yeah.
all
There's a
the games.
fighting game. So the fighting game, they I don't know what was it called. They had a robot fight. The team had made a robot themed fighting game, something Thunder, Rising Thunder, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And it was a robot themed fighting game where the ability, it was super simple inputs, but the abilities were on cooldown. Sounds familiar?
Oh
It's
yeah.
pretty much a setup for League of Legends.
Uh,
I still suspect that the whole point of them making that game was to pitch it to Riot so that they could make the League of Legends fighting game, because it really, other than the theme, mechanically it worked like the fusion of League of Legends with a fighting game in a very clever way. I thought the game was good, but yeah. So there's a fighting game that's coming out, but there's also an RPG. I think it's called Blade of the Ruined King or something like that. Something of the Ruined King.
okay.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Maybe I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, but it looks really cool. It's from the people who made the Battle Chasers RPG. I don't know if you
Hmm.
know that one.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge comic book fan. Battle Chasers was made by one of my favorite comic book artists, Joe Madureira, and the game was pretty good. It was gorgeous. It was really really beautiful. You could tell he was art director on it. And I believe that team is making the next League of Legends RPG, so it's going to be gorgeous as well. It's
Hmm.
probably going to be really good too. Yeah.
Yeah, going off like the Wikipedia page. Currently, like they have League of Legends, the game, the MOBA.
Mhm.
They have Team
Mhm.
Fight Tactics, which is the auto battler, similar to the Dota
Yeah.
Auto Chess, I guess. I love
Yeah.
those. But was
They're fun.
2018 or
Yeah.
2019 when they came out. Those were
Yeah.
fun. They have Wild Rift, which is basically the MOBA on iOS and Android.
Yes. Yes.
Legends of Runeterra, which is the card game we're talking about. And
Hmm.
then they have three projects. There's Valorant, which is I think different.
Yeah.
It
It's
used
not
to
the
be,
same world.
yeah, it was codenamed Project A. Now there's
Hmm.
two other projects that we know about. Project L, which is a fighting game based on League of
Hmm.
Legends. There's Project F, which is an action role-playing hack and slash, also based on
Yeah.
League of Legends. And then there's
Hmm.
an unknown MMORPG also based on League of Legends.
What? I didn't
Yeah.
know about that.
I'm not sure if it's rumor or speculation. I'm reading that off the Wikipedia page. Apparently,
Wikipedia.
there's a Polygon article and there's an IGN article.
Well, they
Which
have a website.
March
Um, uh,
2021 is, I think, when those
yeah.
articles were about, and the rumored title is World of Runeterra.
Okay. So on the Riot Games website,
Hmm.
they have a big splash page that says we're making an MMO.
Okay,
So it is true. It's
it
not
is
a
true.
rumor.
It is. It's not a
Yeah.
rumor then.
It's not a rumor.
Yeah,
They're making an MMO. It is announced. I missed it somehow,
yeah,
but I don't really play on MMOs anymore for
yeah,
because I love them too much and I get absorbed into the world. So that's probably I might have even heard of it and forgot about it,
yeah.
but I forgot about it.
But
Yeah,
that's why I think it's super interesting what they're doing. So like it's probably too
yeah,
much for me at this point to spend 500 hours into learning a MOBA, but
yeah,
I will probably jump into the fighting game, the hack and slash, or the MMO.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And most probably, I will gather so much information from playing these other games that if I ever
Mhm.
end up playing the MOBA, I will kind of know the characters and know what they're doing to like
Yeah.
a high level
You
thing.
know, I didn't really get into the lore of League of Legends when I played League of Legends, even though I played it a lot. I know a lot of people like read up about it, knew all the characters, their relationships with each other.
Yeah,
Me, if it wasn't in a soundbite in game, I didn't know it because it wasn't why I was playing the game.
yeah,
To the point that I didn't even realize they all come from different like cities and towns. And then in Legends of Runeterra, that was actually one of the mechanics, like the
yeah,
factions, right? And that's the first time I'm like, oh, okay. So when that person mentioned this area, it's actually important. It's not just like background flavor. It's important to the character, to their motivations and what have you. So it's going to be interesting to see who knows what from which games they play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's probably very interesting to write the stories for these games because if you think about it, like the lore that's been written for these games are written on the characters that are
Yeah,
based on uh, mod characters that are based
yeah,
on Warcraft 3 characters.
yeah, yeah.
So like
Absolutely.
there's a root in every one of those characters that link directly to a Warcraft 3 thing.
Yes,
You know, like
exactly.
even
I
like
wouldn't say maybe everyone because they've surpassed it
they've
by a
added
lot.
that a
Like,
lot, but yeah, but there are
yeah,
probably a lot of them. Like
initially, yes, yeah,
for Dota 2, for me, I can definitely see the lineage. You know, like
yeah, yeah,
there's some characters that are heroes or like very prominent Warcraft characters
yeah. Exactly,
that
exactly.
still have the
And
resemblance in the character design. So like to try to create a lore around that without tying it
yeah,
to the original, I think is a very interesting creative endeavor that
it is.
a lot
So,
of
do you
these
know
companies ended
Watchmen,
up
right?
doing. What's that?
Yeah, you know about Watchmen,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah,
The
exactly. That's
graphic
a
novel.
that's an awesome example, actually.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exactly what happened.
yeah. Maybe you tell the
So
story for the podcast.
yeah, absolutely. So basically, when Watchmen was being made, Alan Moore was given characters from I think it was from another company that DC had just bought,
They
and they're
just
like,
bought.
yeah, they bought them, and they're like, make a story with these characters, and he made a story that was like dark and like very very different than what DC had expected. So for whatever reasons, they're like, no, you know what, we want to include these characters in the DC universe. You're doing something completely different, so keep your story, but don't keep these characters. Like come up with new ones. But you could draw a line. Like each one is an XP, like it's an exported version of that other character. So Blue Beetle became Night Owl, as an
Yeah.
example. The Atom became Mr. Manhattan. I can't remember who the comedian was. Like each one had like a another character that they were based on, and they're one to one, personality wise, worldview wise, ability wise. Like instead of a big beetle robot, now it's a big owl robot. It's fascinating. It's really
But
really
the
interesting
world
that he
that
was able to pull that
combines
off.
all of those characters and their relationships with each other is what Alan Moore basically came up with to bind all
Exactly.
of these characters together, which I find fascinating.
It's incredible. It really is. It's
Yeah.
masterful, even.
It's
Really.
masterful. I agree. And yeah,
Yeah.
there is a bit of that going on in the MOBA story section. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's probably one of many Riot games I'll end up, sampling, I guess, before I decide if I want to go into it or not. I don't know if I'm gonna be a regular player of Legends of Runeterra because, like, I'm
Hmm.
checking it out. I liked it. I thought it was interesting, and there's a bunch of interesting things to it. But also, like, saw a lot of similarities between it and other card games that I've played. So
Yeah.
I felt like
Exactly.
I've had my fill of these things
Hmm.
for a while.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure if I'm going to come back to it or not, but high quality nonetheless. On the phone,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. It's also
Yeah.
like 4 gigs. It's taking so much space
Yeah.
of my phone.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the same experience. I played it for, I don't remember how long, honestly, but if like 4 or 5 hours feels about right. Like finishing the story thing and then doing some multiplayer and then calling it.
Mhm.
So I think we had a very similar experience. Excellent game. If I had played it before Hearthstone, I probably would have played it and not Hearthstone.
Yeah.
Now I don't play either of these things. I'm back to playing Magic the Gathering.
Uh huh.
Um, yeah, and I'm really enjoying that. Whenever in between waves, I go to pre-releases. I play with friends, and my modest collection is growing again just from the cards I get from those things, and I'm liking it. It's like not it's not an overwhelming hobby like it was when I used to play it like a lot all the time.
Yeah.
It's a thing I do once in a while now, and I think it's a healthier relationship, and I like it a lot more doing it that way. You
I
know what
think
I mean?
stopped playing Magic in 2013, but I was playing an unhealthy amount of that as well. So I think it's probably
Yeah,
why. And when I ended up moving, I had to like sell a lot of my cards. I think at some point when I left New Zealand, I sold like 2,000 cards. I went to a shop and had to get
yeah,
because like I'm not gonna carry Magic cards with me as I'm
of
traveling
course.
around the world.
They're heavy.
Take a lot of space.
Yeah,
But it was
yeah,
an
absolutely.
fun. Like I still would like to do a draft night every now and then.
If we're ever in the same city, let's draft.
Ah, that'll be fun.
It'll be
That'll be
fun.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
one
It's
other.
funny because like when I
Yeah, go
yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
Sorry.
no, you go ahead, man.
Uh, okay, what I was going to say is that there was a situation in at GDC where I was hosting a panel, and it was supposed to be a narrative panel, and the people who were going to be on it were from different like narrative heavy games.
Mm.
Two of the people caught COVID, so they
Oh no.
dropped out, and the third person was Daniel Mullins, who made Inscription.
Oh yeah.
So our panel got turned into a fireside chat because now we're just two people. And one of the funnest thing about that conversation is at one point I asked him about the inspirations for Inscription, and like it's weird. I shouldn't be have been shocked. It's bizarre that I was shocked, but he was saying all the things that I should have expected. Like he loved Slay the Spire. He
Yeah.
loves Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Of course, he was going to say these things, but like I just didn't. I didn't prepare myself for those answers. So when he said it, I was like freaking out. I'm like, oh, all these things that I love, of course, they came together in your inspiration to make another thing that I love, right?
Yeah.
So we geeked out about Magic the Gathering a lot,
Oh,
like
that's
asking
pretty
about like
cool.
what strategies, which commanders, which whatever, and we made a date that next time we're in the same city, we're going to bring our decks and play.
Ah,
It's going
that's
to be fun.
cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
They should stream it.
Oh, we should.
They should stream it.
Yeah.
That should be fun.
Yeah, he sweeped. Oh my god, did he ever sweep in all the awards that he's been in? That game is a big deal.
Uh,
Inscription was a big
It's
deal.
a good. I'm so happy. Like that. That game
Yeah,
is
me too.
phenomenal. I, I,
It's
d-
well deserved.
I don't want to comment more on that game because I still don't want to spoil it for whoever wants to play it. But definitely, that
Yes,
game is amazing. It's worth. Everybody should check it out.
play it. Definitely play it.
One more thing I want to mention before we jump over maybe to emails or something.
Yeah,
I watched the show. I've been watching a bunch of stuff on my Netflix on my phone. So I watched a bit of Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no
yeah,
Yaiba.
yeah.
So I love.
I watched a bit of it too.
You watched some of that. I think I watched like 10, 15 episodes of what I think there's only the one season on Netflix. I watched that.
Yeah,
So
I watched like four or five, so
four
I'm
or
like
five.
halfway through.
So I know that it's a thing. Like it's hard to. Everybody's raving about it. Like there's so many action figures and like fan art, and like you can't go to an anime manga kind of thing without seeing so many cosplay or all of that. So I know that it's huge. So I
Hmm.
just started getting to watch it. It's a pretty interesting show.
Yeah.
There's another one season that's released in 2019 to 2020, I think. Yeah, 2020, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
26 episodes, and there's a movie that
Hmm.
that I want to watch afterwards. So far, I've watched around 10 episodes of it, and it's an interesting anime.
Take. Yeah.
It's kind of like the traditional anime in which like there's the growth of the character, and like you become stronger over
Yeah.
time, learn the techniques, and defeat
Yeah.
stronger foes. But I like
Hmm.
the theme around it. I like this like oni style of fantasy and the
Hmm.
different types of demons basically that they have to defeat.
That's true.
And
I started.
it's still like a shonen style
Yeah.
manga. Like it follows the formula, but it's a bit more adult because it's a bit more violent
Hmm.
than a standard shonen.
Hmm.
Yeah, so far so good.
That's That's actually why I started watching it. Is because my daughter wanted to watch it,
Okay.
and she's 12, so she's at that age where like don't have to watch her as closely for violent content
Yeah.
as before.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I've seen the things online, and I'm like I'm not sure if I'm like I let me see it with you, right? Let me
Yeah.
watch it with you. So it's a thing we're doing together. We're just watching it. So far, yeah, it's like for a 12-year-old, it's fine. Like it's
Hmm.
not a It's, their threshold. Different parents are comfortable with different threshold. I'm comfortable with my daughter watching something at this level,
Yeah.
uh, but that I started watching it for that reason, and now it's just a fun thing that we share. We just sit down and watch another episode of Demon Slayer, which is pretty cool.
And now you got
Yeah.
to you tease each other because somebody watches an episode without the other, and you have to catch up.
I suspect that she's doing that and not telling me, because the first couple we watched, she was shocked and surprised by a few things. Now she's quiet. So, yeah,
That's cute.
I suspect that she's doing it, but it's fine. Let her do it. If she wants to watch it and talk to her friends about it, that's okay, right?
It's
Yeah.
cool.
Now that the game it has my seal of approval, I mean, it's still definitely okay. Yeah.
it's cool. I thought there's probably gonna be video games coming out for this thing at some point,
Yeah.
so it'll be good for me to get
Yeah.
to know the lore before I dive into some of the video games.
Yeah, because it got big fast. Like it
Yeah,
went from I never heard of this to everyone's talking about it, to the point that I was like, is this like a classic old thing like that I missed, or was because it just like overwhelmed the internet at one point.
it's one of those
So
pandemic things that just blew up
yeah,
out of the blue.
yeah,
Actually, like there is a
yeah.
game that's announced in 2020.
Wow.
So it's the Hinokami Chronicles, is what it's called. Developed by CyberConnect 2. They're the
Yeah,
people
they're
that
in
do
Montreal.
they're in Montreal, are they?
Well, I mean,
They're a
they're in
Japanese
Japan. They're
company.
based out of
They used to do
Japan,
the
but
dot
they have a
hacks, the dot hack games, and the Naruto games.
yes. But I mean, they have an office. They have a studio in Japan, in
Oh,
Montreal,
I didn't know that
is
they
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
studio in Montreal. I know that they have a studio
Yeah,
in Tokyo.
I went to their opening ceremony when they opened in 2019, I think,
Hmm.
or 2018. So yeah, like it was a very interesting opening ceremony, because generally we don't have opening ceremonies here for studios that open. It's more like a launch party type thing or something like that. So it was a little bit like it was interesting to see that culture seep in.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah.
No, it actually the game came out. Turns out in October
What?
2021.
That was fast.
Yeah, right. I haven't played that yet, so
I
I
haven't
will.
even heard of the game.
I'll add that to my to playlist now that I know now that I know what I'm looking at.
Oh, that's
I like
pretty
those
cool.
CyberConnect
Awesome.
games. Like I enjoyed those Naruto games since I was like into the show and
Yeah,
everything.
they kind of feel just enough fighting game for to have my interest. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the mechanics
th-
feel kind of like that.
exactly. There's always something new that is worth checking out. They do the spectacle anime thing, but also they're not too
Yeah,
deep that they will like take my a lot of my time.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that looks like one of those games. So I guess I'll finish the
Looks
Joe and
good to
the
me.
show, and maybe I'll jump into that at some point.
Speaking of jumping into something, do you want to jump into
Oh,
emails?
oh wow, what a segue!
A little forced, but it's fine. It works
A
with
little
jumps.
forced, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll take it. So we have an email by our frequent listener and Jose. So Jose has sent us a lot of emails in the past. We're very grateful for them and very happy. They're always thoughtful. Um, Jose goes on to say, "You all have touched on your feelings about the world starting to go back to normal, whether or not it should, and how your schedules are suddenly getting more and more intense. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the latter? Have your perspectives on travel, work, or career changed since the before times? Also, how does it feel when you think about the podcast, having started it in part due to the pandemic and carrying it forward into a busier world?" Both very good questions.
Wow, this sounds like
So,
Jose has been listening to us at the beginning of this podcast.
yeah, because that's something we mentioned very, very early on. So, great.
Yeah, you can go first, Usama.
Sure. Okay, so for the first question, let's go back to it a bit. Or career tune. Have so the first one is, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the latter, on how your schedules are suddenly getting more and more intense. So, um, yeah, it's we kind of talked about it at the
Yeah.
beginning of the podcast, so we're retreading water a little bit, but life is getting different. We're gonna like busy. We're adapting. I feel this is going to be cyclical because just seeing patterns, there are waves. It's going to get busy and then things are going to kind of shut down a bit. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that's not the case. But I
Mhm.
feel like everyone kind of is. preparing for that. They're like not sure if this is temporary, if this is permanent, how long it's going to last, if there's a new variant that's going to come out, what they're going to do about it. So I think a lot of people have, they're testing the water, like the proverbial water with their foot before jumping in type thing. And I think that's natural and normal way to do things. You don't want to go all in and then regret it later. Like buy like you don't want to sell your house that you bought far away from work and move in to an apartment close to work yet. If, as an example, not as actually what everyone did, but many people did something like that. You know what I mean? They're like, we need more space now. So no one's making the drastic moves, as far as I see. Everyone's making little um, calculated small moves, and I'm no different. I have my office. I'm able to work from home, and I'm not planning to make any big changes. Even like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we want to do road trips again. Uh, we don't have any on the timeline. We're just discussing, talking, like looking at it, different options, and doing a little bit of research on that topic. And I think you can't expect more from anyone else. Everyone has a little is hesitant in one way or another to just assume that everything is okay again, because it's not. Like we're living in a different reality between both realities, right? It's
Yeah,
not the one extreme of before, and it's not the extreme of when we were in total lockdown. It's something in between that's in flux. So we have to adjust to that. To that, be what's the word I'm looking for? Be
flexible,
uh yeah,
agile.
flexible. Exactly, both good words, and I'm sure there were a dozen others that would have worked. What about you,
Yeah,
Fozy?
it makes a lot of sense, man. I think I agree with you. Like, I think it's important for us to recognize, or like, this is how I like to tackle it for myself personally. Like, I identified that we are in a time of change, and that
Hmm.
it's kind of intrinsic to us that we try to resist change at first,
Yeah,
though change is inevitable. But like,
yeah.
change is uncomfortable because it brings in the unknown. So that's why defensively we intrinsically try to resist it. So I try to kind of like catch myself whenever I feel those like urges to resist, and then try to kind of coach myself into accepting it and embracing. So like identifying that there is a change that's happening. I don't know where it's going, and I kind of need to try it out. And like, like you do with everything, including game development, you try out a bunch of stuff. Then you have a look
Hmm.
back, and you identify, was did that work for me? Did that go in the right direction? Were there things that I
Hmm.
did that I want to change? Are there things that did not do well for me and all of this? And then I make the necessary adjustments, and then I try again. So for the time being, I'm trying like not to make any big choices, but just really embrace the change as it's
Hmm.
happening. And then at some point, I want to look back, and as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, and look back and think, did I make the right choices? Did I have enough time for myself? Is
Hmm.
Am I comfortable with this? Am I getting out of this the same way that I want? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Do I have the impact I want to have, and so forth? And then
Hmm.
readjust. So I'm currently just going with the flow for the time being, and then at some
Hmm.
point I will look back and reevaluate.
Yeah, it's great. I think that's all we can do. Anything else is you're potentially setting yourself up for disappointment if you
Change is
think you've
inevitable.
figured exactly. So, question two, just to re-ask it again, how do you feel? How does it feel when you think about the podcast having started in part due to the pandemic and carrying it forward into a busier world? We were just discussing this right before the this episode,
Yeah,
where I don't remember the last time we were three on
yeah,
the
it's
same
been a
podcast.
while.
Yeah, and we have a lot that we couldn't even get to, and we had to record them super late, including this one. This one was supposed to air 2 days ago. Hopefully, it'll air today. Super, super late. This is just a byproduct of having three people who are extremely busy with different schedules in different time zones. Like, that's just inevitable, right?
Yeah,
Um, and one thing that I was discussing with both Fozzy and Rami that we're open to, and just we don't have time to set it up right now, but hopefully we'll find the time, is potentially to expand the roster of Habibis so that we have more people who are able to jump in. I seriously think that's the way to go, because otherwise the inconsistency doesn't seem like there's no other solution. We are getting busier. that is just inevitable, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, Fauzi, if you have a different take.
I'm just like, that's one of the silver linings. I'm happy that, like, one of the things that happened out of the pandemic, I'm happy that we managed to do this thing, because I didn't think we would have did it at all if it wasn't
Yep,
for the circumstances surrounding us. And I think that,
exactly.
like, knowing our schedules now, this is what it used to be before the pandemic. We wouldn't have even suggested this thing to exist.
A hundred
Just by
percent.
knowing
Like,
about how
are you
difficult it would be
crazy?
to get everybody
Exactly.
in at the same time. But now that, like, we started this journey, and like, I think it's been fulfilling for a lot of us in on different ways.
Hmm.
It's about now also looking back at what worked and what didn't, and how we can
Hmm.
adjust to suit the current change that we are facing. So
Hmm. That makes perfect sense. Yeah,
yeah.
that's. I guess that's it for emails for this week.
And that, I guess that's it for the podcast as well. Let's put a doily
Yeah,
on it and send this one home.
that's never not funny.
It's becoming a thing.
Absolutely.
It's like calling out segways and putting doily on
Yeah.
things when you want to end them.
It's our thing. I love that we have our thing, Fozy, that
Uh,
we share a thing. That's beautiful.
it's been a couple of years, so like that's the least we would want out of it.
Exactly.
Anyway,
Cool. So
thank you everybody for
yeah.
listening. Join us next week. We will have some Habibis online talking about stuff and shipping it into a podcast. But for the time being, salam.
Salam.
That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I am Fawzi Masmar, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Fawzi Masmar. My fellow Habibis were Osama Dorias, who you can find on Twitter at Osama Dorias, and Rami Ismail, who you can find on Twitter at THA_Rami. Send us your questions, stories, and suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening. Salam.